And welcome back. I'm Robert Breaker, missionary evangelist in Spanish and English speaking people. And every week I put a new sermon up on YouTube and on Vimeo. And you can find that at thecloudchurch.org. And the Bible says, where two or more are gathered in my midst, there am I in the midst of them. And here we are, me speaking and preaching the Word of God, and you watching, so that's two or more. So I guess we can call ourselves a church in that sense, the Cloud Church. We're going through the cloud, coming to you, trying to present the truth of the Bible. And today's sermon, I believe, is so important for the day and age in which we live. This is something that's spoken of in the Old Testament as well as the New. But I believe it's not just something that happened years ago. I believe it's something that's still continuing to this day. So I'm going to try to, the best that I can, present this to you, the Way of Balaam. What is the Way of Balaam? Well, we're going to go through a lot of verses today, a lot of scriptures. In fact, I'm going to read probably several chapters from the Bible. And I want to present to you this Way of Balaam, because the Way of Balaam is evil, as we'll see. There's 3 times in the New Testament that it talks about Balaam. We look at each one of those verses. They want to look at this, I guess you could call him a prophet, but in a way he was a deceitful, wicked prophet. He was like what the Bible calls today a hireling, someone who was in the ministry just for money. And they didn't care about fruit or didn't care about good things. All they cared about was him getting rich. And so this is going to be a lesson that's going to be instructive to us. But also, this is something that today is really sad, because we see this same spirit of Balaam in the world today. And sadly, many politicians have adopted this way, the way of Balaam, and are teaching the way of Balaam, a way that God hates. He calls it an error. And by so doing, they're destroying the country. You see, Balaam did something in the Old Testament that destroyed the people of Israel and brought down that nation. And it was only by the grace of God that they were able to come back from it. Well, today we see this same push, and we see this same, what the Bible calls, doctrine of Balaam, being pushed upon society today, oftentimes by evil, wicked men. And this teaching is bringing down the downfall of society, and unless something changes, it will bring the downfall of America. So without further ado, let me get into this message. I've got 3 verses that I want to start with as we look at the way of Balaam. And I always like to draw the Bible up here and explain, that where in the New Testament today, in the church age, it ends in the rapture. And in the Old Testament that you have the law. Well, this is the law back here, and this is grace. Well, the time period in which we're speaking about takes place about right here. But as the children of Israel went out in the Exodus, they went out in this time period and they found their enemies and they began to conquer. And God gave them liberty and God helped them to conquer Israel. The people around Israel, the Amalekites and all these different people, the Jebusites. And what we're dealing with today, if I'm not mistaken, are the Moabites. And what's interesting is today we have people that are directly tied to these same people, the Amalekites and the Moabites. They come through that lineage. And all throughout the world they're becoming refugees. And they're traveling all over Europe and even coming to America. And it's the same group that the children of Israel had problems with back then. And they're coming in today. And you know what? It's almost like the way of Balaam back then is coming to pass here in our day and age. Hopefully you'll see what I'm talking about as we go through this. This is going to be unlike any sermon that I've preached before, because I'm going to just give you the story from the Bible about it. I'm going to read it to you. Don't have very many points, and so hopefully it will be not boring, but and not entertaining. I'm not trying to entertain, but hopefully it will be educational. Hopefully it'll be edifying, and you'll learn about the way of Balaam and how we can combat it, because the way of Balaam is destructive, and we're seeing that destruction in the day and age in which we live. So first of all, I want to go to 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 15. And in 2 Peter 2:15 we see the first mention of Balaam in the New Testament. Balaam is mentioned only 3 times in the New Testament. quite a few times in the Old Testament. But in the New Testament we see Balaam. And it says here in 2 Peter 2:15, which have forsaken the right way. Well, right there we realize that the way of Balaam is the wrong way. I mean, if the right way is God's way, and then God says they've chosen the way of Balaam, then the way of Balaam is the wrong way. I'll put an exclamation point here. Let's don't follow the way of Balaam. It's not the right way, according to the Bible. Again, 2 Peter 2:15 says, which have forsaken the right way and are gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Bosor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness. So according to the Bible, God chastises a certain group of people, saying they forsook the right way, they went astray, and they followed the way of Balaam. The way of Balaam is the wrong way. It's to go astray. So to go the way of Balaam, as the world is headed today, is to go astray from the ways of God. So that's the first time, and it's called the way of Balaam. And what is it? Well, basically it's to love money more than God. So he loved wages, but I'll just put he loved money more than God. Supposedly a prophet, supposedly someone that God spoke to give a message to other. He wasn't interested in the message. He wasn't interested in serving God. He just wanted to do it for this right here. Jude chapter 1 and verse 11. The second time that we read about this guy named Balaam in the New Testament. And Jude verse 11 says, woe unto them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the error of Balaam. So, the way of Balaam is to go in error. It's to go astray, we read earlier. And it's wrong. It's the wrong way. So it's not sounding real good, this way of Balaam, is it? Again, verse 11, woe unto them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the error of Balaam for reward. So the error of Balaam was what? The error was for, I'll just put this, well, I'll put reward. Reward. You see, what old Balaam wanted more than God was money. That's all he cared about. And because that's all he cared about, he did something dirty and low down and sorry, and it affected others, and it led to the death of many, many people. It's so sad how someone can do something, and it's so evil and so wicked that it leads to the death of other people. That's a sad thing, but that's what the way of Balaam did. Because he cared only about himself, he cared not if others died. And his actions led to the death of others. So once again, verse 11, woe unto them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, ran greedily after the error of Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsaying of Corey. Someone perished because of the way of Balaam. Balaam's way led to hell. Someone died because of it. Now let's go to Revelation chapter 2 and verse 14. And I told you earlier, and you'll see this as we tie it all together, how that the way of Balaam is becoming the political way. The political agenda of today is the way of Balaam. What does that mean? That means it's going to ultimately lead to the death of millions, maybe even billions of people. And that's what's so sad. That's why we have the Bible. That's why we preach the Bible, to warn people, hey, don't go in the way of Balaam. Come to the way of God, so people don't have to die because of your sin. Revelation chapter 2 and verse 14. The third time that the Bible in the New Testament mentions Balaam. It says, but I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam. So, doctrine. So there's a doctrine of Balaam. What is the doctrine of Balaam? Well, simply put, the doctrine of Balaam is me first, and only money for me, and to hell with everybody else. That's really the way of Balaam. It's only thinking about yourself and getting rich and not worrying about anyone else. Sounds like your modern day politicians. They don't care about the best of the country. They don't care about the poor. They don't care about anybody. All they care about is getting rich and taking for themselves. That's the way of Balaam. And it says there, who taught the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak, who's the king, as we'll see, to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornication. So this way of Balaam has idol worship in it and fornication. So there's all these different things tied up in the way of Balaam. So as we go through this message, we're going to see exactly what it's talking about. So Balaam was a soothsayer, or a prophet, if you will, in the Old Testament. Go back to Joshua, and let me read about him. He's mentioned, not that many times, but a lot more than 3 times in the Old Testament. And it's kind of one of those things that in order to find the way of Balaam, you have to read everything that says about him and kind of read between the lines just a little bit in order to understand what it is that he did. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to figure out, what did he do? Why is he always looked at as evil? Why does God say he's astray and he's wrong? Why does God say that he did an error? Why did God say that his doctrine was vile and wicked and ungodly? Why does God put this guy Balaam in a bad light? What is this way that he did that is so wrong for us today? Joshua chapter 13 and verse 22, it says, Balaam also, the son of Beor, the soothsayer, that's like a prophet, did the children of Israel slay with the sword among them that were slain by him. So Israel killed this guy, Balaam, because of his way. The way of Balaam was so awful and so wicked that it caused the children of Israel to sin. And because of that, it brought a curse of God upon the children of Israel. And when it did, Israel said, we don't want this curse. So they rose up and they killed those that went into the way of Balaam. And they ultimately killed Balaam because his way ended up cursing the children of God rather than allowing them to be blessed. I tell you what, I'd love to have America today is America to be blessed rather than cursed. But the way that America is headed today, as they follow the way of Balaam, is to destruction and to judgment rather than to the blessings of God, because they're going astray. They're going down the wrong path. They're choosing to follow Satan rather than God. Let me read another verse here. I believe I had one more verse here. Yeah, let me read Micah chapter 6 and verse 5. We'll look it up here on the computer, that's faster. In Micah chapter 6 and verse 5, what old Balaam did wasn't that bad in the eyes of some people. It wasn't like he committed fornication himself. It's not like he killed anybody himself with his own hand. It's not like he stole money from anybody and robbed the bank. You see, it wasn't what he did so much what he counseled and what he said from the mouth. The Bible says life and death are in the power of the tongue. And sometimes something said with the mouth can cause more damage than anything else. And that's what happened, was something that came from his mouth caused much damage. In Micah chapter 6 and verse 5 it says, O my people, remember now what Balak king of Moab consulted, and what Balaam the son of Beor answered him from Shittim into Gilgal, that ye may know the righteousness of the Lord. Hopefully through this study we'll know what right is, the righteousness of God, because we're seeing right now what the wrong way is. And this story should teach us the righteousness of the Lord, the right way. But what does it say here? It says Balak king of Moab consulted. Balaam was a soothsayer. He was a prophet. And he was asked by this man Balak to curse the people of Israel. And 3 times he was going to do it, but the Spirit of the Lord entered him and then blessed Israel. And so it ends up that this guy, after he tried so hard to curse them, and he couldn't, the king says, well, I'm not going to give you any money, because I told you to do a certain thing and you did the opposite. And we're going to read this story. Because of that, he lost this. And as we find out, he decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to counsel this king to do a certain thing in order for him to pay me, in order for God to curse Israel. So it was something that he did. He went out of his authority as a prophet of speaking for the Lord. And he said something in the flesh, and he counseled this king to do a certain thing, which led to many deaths in Israel, and even led to Balaam being killed, because he counseled someone to do something outside of the Word of God. Well, to see this story, and it's a little bit of a long story, it takes up 3 chapters in the Old Testament. To see this story, let's go back to the Old Testament, Numbers chapter 22. And like I said, I don't want this to be boring, but there's a reason that you have a story like this in the Old Testament. And there's a reason that it takes up 3 chapters. It's mentioned 3 times in the New Testament. It's mentioned all throughout the Old Testament. And God wants people to understand the way of Balaam because it's something He wants them to remember and not repeat. The old saying is, the only thing people never learn from history is people never learn from history. And if they don't learn from history, guess what? They're doomed to repeat it. And as I see the way of Balaam in his day and what the Bible says happened, and I look at America today, I see this country following the way of Balaam and repeating history. And it's so sad to me to know what the ultimate end will be. Judgment upon America because they choose the wrong way and they choose to go astray. So you're probably saying, well, what is it already? What is the way of Balaam? All right, let's read it. It's a lot of reading, but it's worth it. And if you have your Bible, I ask you to read along with me because this is an important story. So the children of Israel had just left Egypt, and they're in the Exodus, and they're going through the desert. I guess they've gone through the 40 years in the wilderness, and now they're coming to a place in order to fight. And as they come to this place, the people around the area are scared to death because Israel has had great victories and they're killing people and taking over their land. A lot of people say, well, then Israel's wrong. No, God told them to do that. And the reason God said so is because the people in that land were so wicked and so vile. They were committing such heinous sins, such as bestiality, that God says, I want those people wiped out. That's His judgment on their sin, that God allowed Israel to come in and take over. Now, chapter 22, verse 1, And the children of Israel set forward and pitched in the plains of Moab on this side Jordan by Jericho. And Balak the son of Zippor saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. So let me make sure I write up here the cast of characters so you'll understand. Balak is the king of Moab. Balaam was the prophet. The Bible calls him a soothsayer. So we'll just use that word. That means a prophet. So this guy Balak is the king of Moab, and Balak was the bad guy, the bad king, who wanted to save himself from the people of God. In fact, he wanted the people of God dead so that he would live and God's people would die. So Balak did everything within his power to try to kill and deceive and just get rid of the people of God. So he went to Balaam and said, Balaam, do something for me. So this is the story of King Balak, king of Moab. This is a story about Balak, the king of Moab. You see what I'm doing? I'm trying to apply it to today with a different name that sounds a lot like this one. But anyway, and so here we go again. Verse 2, Numbers 22:2. And Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. So Israel had wiped out the Amorites. And it says, and Moab was sore afraid of the people because there were many. Well, it almost sounds like America today. The politicians that take over, they're afraid of the people of God. Who is that today? The Christians. Oh, they're afraid of Christians, so they want to do everything they can to push against Christians. Maybe you'll see the correlation where I'm going with this. Verse 4, And Moab said unto the elders of Midian, Now shall this company lick up all that are round about us, as the ox licketh up the grass of the field. And Balak the son of Zippor was king of the Moabites at that time. So he was the king of Moab. Moab is a country over there today where there's a lot of Muslims in that area. I mean, all that area is a lot of Muslims. And they all are descendants of Ishmael, which, by the way, the Arabs are descendants of Ishmael. A lot of Muslims, their descendancy is from Ishmael. Interesting. Verse 5, He sent messengers therefore unto Balaam. Who did? Balak. Sent messengers unto Balaam, the son of Beor, to Bethor, which is by the river of the land of the children of this people, to call him, saying, Behold, there is a people come out of Egypt. Behold, they cover the face of the earth, and they abide over against me. So the people of God, Israel, were against the evil king. And it says there, and this is verse 6, this is Balak telling Balaam, I want you to do this for me. Verse 6, Come now, therefore, I pray thee, curse me this people, for they are too mighty for me. Peradventure I shall prevail, that we might smite them, that I may drive them out of the land. For I wot that he whom thou blessest is blessed, and he whom thou cursest is cursed. So Balak says to Balaam, go curse those people, so that God will curse them, and they won't able to defeat us, and that we might be stronger, that we might win, that we might grow, and they may diminish. That was the intent of the wicked king from the Ishmael descendant, the descendant of Ishmael. And so it says, verse 7, the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the rewards of divination in their hand. And they came unto Balaam and spake unto him the words of Balak. So Balak sent out people with rewards, with money. And they said to this prophet Balaam, if you curse Israel for us, we will give you lots of money. So here you have the state, Moab, coming to a religious leader and saying, we'll pay you good money if you'll preach what we say. If you'll make us feel good. If you tell us what we want to hear. And if you'll curse the people of God rather than preach what God tells you. Sound like today? Today with all the FEMA preachers. Sounds kind of like today where many people today are hirelings that claim to be pastors and that are preaching what they're told rather than preaching what the Bible says. Interesting. Verse 8, and he said unto them, lodge here this night, and I will bring you word again, as the Lord shall speak unto me. And the princes of Moab abode with Balaam. So Balaam says, whatever God tells me tonight, I'll tell you tomorrow. 9, and God came unto Balaam and said, what men are these with thee? Now God knew who those men were. He knew who they were before they even showed up, but he wanted Balaam to tell him, to see if Balaam would tell the truth. And Balaam said unto God, Balak the son of Zippor, king of Moab, hath sent unto me, saying, behold, there is a people come out of Egypt, which covereth the face of the earth. Come now, curse me them. Peradventure I shall be able to overcome them and drive them out. So he tells God exactly what they said. Balak wanted this preacher to become his preacher and to say what would have him happy. If you will, itching ears. He had itching ears. He wanted Balaam to get on his side and preach what he wanted to hear. And you know what? Had Balaam done that, he would have got a lot of money. But at first, Balaam was a good preacher. He did what he was told by God and told them the truth. But as we see the story transgress, we see old Balaam going, it really would be nice to have all those rewards of divination. It really would be nice to have money. I don't have to compromise the message of God too much, and then I could get paid for it. That's part of the error of Balaam. So verse 12, and God said unto Balaam, thou shalt not go with them. Thou shalt not curse the people, for they are blessed. And Balaam rose up in the morning and said unto the princes of Balak, get you into your land, for the Lord refuseth to give me leave to go with you. Well, you see, God gave him a 3-point message. In verse 12, God says, you can't go, you can't curse them, and he said they are blessed. And rather than Balaam come and tell the princes, God told me 3 points to tell you, he only said 1. He says, God told me I can't go with you. No, Balaam, that's not what God said. That's only part of the message. God also said they're already blessed, and God already said that he could not curse them. So notice, from the beginning, this guy Balaam is a compromiser. He doesn't say everything that he knows he should say because he's afraid it would offend. So he only says one part of the message that God gave. Now imagine how God must get angry when someone doesn't tell the whole message. Verse 14, and the princes of Moab rose up and they went into Balak and said, Balaam refused to come with us. Yeah, but why didn't they give the rest of the message? Also, he said they're blessed, and also he said he can't curse them. Well, they couldn't give that because Balaam didn't say that to them, even though God told him to say that to them. And then it says, verse 15, and Balak sent yet again princes more and more honorable than they. Well, had Balaam given the entire message, then Balak wouldn't have sent princes back again. But because part of the message was withheld, old Balak said, well, let's go try again. Let's go try again. Maybe he said he can't go just because he didn't feel like going. Let's try again, see if we can't get this guy on our side. And so they tried again. And it says here, In verse 16, and they came to Balaam and said to him, Thus saith Balak the son of Zippor, Let nothing, I pray thee, hinder thee from coming unto me. For I will promote thee unto very great honor, and will do whatsoever thou sayest unto me. Come therefore, I pray thee, curse me, this people. So two things offered. He was offered that right there, and he was offered promotion. He could have been, I guess, the preacher that was the head preacher of all of Moab in a nice monastery or abbey, and he could have been the one that everybody looked at like the Billy Graham of his day, so to speak. What did he do? Verse 18, And Balaam answered and said unto the servants of Balak, If Balak would give me his house full of silver and gold, I cannot go beyond the word of the Lord my God to do less or more. Oh, isn't he pious? He didn't even give the whole message. He only gave one of 3 points. But yet they come back, we're going to promote you, we're going to give you money. Oh, I just can't do that. I've got to do what God tells me to do. When he didn't even tell them everything that God told him. Interesting. Continuing there's a lot to get through, so I've got to hurry. Verse 19, Now therefore I pray you, tarry ye also here this night, that I may know what the Lord will say unto me more. 20, And God came unto Balaam at night and said unto him, If the men come to call thee, rise up and go with them, but yet the word which I say unto thee, that shalt thou do. So God speaks to him again and says, Look, last time you didn't say what I told you to say. So whatever I say unto you, you do it. Well, did he? Did he? And Balaam rose up in the morning and saddled his ass and went with the princes unto Moab. What's missing there? Notice that nowhere does it say that Balaam said, well, this time God told me this. He never tells them what God told him. Again, he compromises the message because he's scared. And secretly within his heart, he wants these two things. So he gets up in the morning and says, I'm just going to go. I won't even say God talked to me or told me anything. I'm just going to go with them and see how it goes. Verse 21, And Balaam rose up in the morning and saddled his ass and went with the princes of Moab. 22, And God's anger was kindled because he went. Now God told him, you can go, but only if you tell them what I say and you do what I tell you to do. And Moab said, no, I'm just going to go. I don't care what you say. So God was angry. And the angel of the Lord stood in the way for an adversary against him. Now he was riding upon his ass, and his 2 servants were there. Now we hear the story of Balaam's ass. Maybe you've heard of this story, maybe you haven't. There was a website for years, balamsass.com or .org, I don't know what it was. It was an interesting website, a lot of good information on there. I don't even know if it still exists. But this is the story of Balaam's ass, an interesting story in the Bible. And it says, Now he was riding upon his ass, and his 2 servants were with him. And the ass saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way, and his sword drawn in his hand. And the ass turned aside out of the way and went into the field, and Balaam smote the ass to turn her into the way. Now we get a glimpse into the heart of Balaam. He was a mean-spirited, angry man. And it says, verse 24, But the angel of the Lord stood in the path of the vineyards, a wall being on this side and a wall on that side. And when the ass saw the angel of the Lord, she thrust herself unto the wall, and crushed Balaam's foot against the wall, and he smote her again. And the angel of the Lord went further, and stood in a narrow place where was no way to turn, either to the right hand or to the left. And when the ass saw the angel of the Lord, she fell down under Balaam, and Balaam's anger was kindled, and he smote the ass with a staff. And the Lord opened the mouth of the ass, and said unto Balaam, What have I done to thee, that thou hast smitten me these 3 times? You see, 3-point message God gave Balaam, but he didn't give it. Many times in the Bible, God does something like that. He does something 3 times because out in the future, or even in the past, he reminds them of, 3 times this happened. For example, old Peter. Remember Peter? 3 times he denied Jesus Christ. Into the book of John, Jesus shows up, and 3 times he says, Do you love me, Peter? Do you love me, Peter? Peter, do you love me? 3 times to remind him of those 3 times. So it sounds like God is trying to remind Balaam, hey, I told you to say 3 things to those people, and you only said 1. And God opened the mouth of the ass so that the ass could speak. And the funny thing here is nowhere in this passage Balaam goes, what? You're speaking to me? How does an animal speak? No, he just answers. That means his mind was on one thing, getting in front of the king to see what kind of money he could get out of him. Well, verse 29, and Balaam said unto the ass, because thou hast mocked me, I would there were a sword in mine hand, for now I would kill thee. Not only is he angry, there's murder in his heart. He has gone away from God and the message that God gave him, and he turned into a reprobate that wants to kill and slaughter and hit and do evil things. Verse 30, and the ass said unto Balaam, am not I thine ass, upon which thou hast ridden ever since I was thine unto this day? Was I ever wont to do so unto thee? And he said, nay. Which is kind of funny, animals, especially horses, say, nay. Well, he said nay as in no. Verse 31, then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way, and his sword drawn in his hand. And he bowed down his head, and he fell flat on his face. Oh, how pious he was. And the angel of the Lord said unto him, wherefore hast thou smitten thine ass these 3 times? Behold, I went out to withstand thee, because thy way is perverse before me. We're looking at the way of Balaam. Well, God says his way is perverse. It's the wrong way, and it's a perverse way. Why? Because as we'll see when we find out what the way of Balaam is, it's a way of fornication. How perverse is that? God hates fornication. And verse 33, and the ass saw me, and turned from me these 3 times, unless she had turned from me. Surely now also I had slain thee, and saved her alive. And Balaam said unto the angel of the Lord, I have sinned, for I knew not that thou stoodest in the way against me. Now therefore, if it displease thee, I will get me back again. Wrong answer. He still wants to go. He should have said, I'm sorry, I'm going back right now. But he says, can I go to the court to see the king? 35, the angel of the Lord said unto Balaam, go with the men, but only the word that I shall speak unto thee, that thou shalt speak. So Balaam went with the princes of Balak. The way of Balaam, by now, you should realize, is the way of Balaam is Balaam giving counsel to this king, not speaking what God said, but what he says. What is it that he said? We're going to get to that. It's him preaching something that's not in the Bible and saying, hey, you ought to do this and this and this, knowing that what he's preaching is against the Word of God. Well, 36, and when Balak heard that Balaam was come, he went out to meet him into the city of Moab, which is in the border of Arnon, which is in the utmost coast. And Balak said unto Balaam, did I not earnestly send unto thee to call thee? Wherefore camest thou not unto me? Am I not able indeed to promote thee to honor? Promotion. You see the what's the word? Temptation that he's trying to tempt this preacher. Tempting him, if you'll do what I tell you, I can promote you and give you money. We should flee temptations. We shouldn't even allow it to get to that point. But old Balaam just got a little bit closer to the temptation, a little bit closer, until he ultimately sinned and gave in to the temptation. Verse 38, and Balaam said unto Balak, lo, I am come unto thee. Have I now any power at all to say anything? The word that God putteth in my mouth, that shall I speak. And Balaam went with Balak, and they came unto Kirjath-Huzoth. And Balak offered oxen and sheep, and sent to Balaam and to the princes that were with him. And it came to pass on the morrow that Balak took Balaam, and brought him up to the high places of Baal, that thence he might see the utmost part of the people. Now notice this. This guy, Balak, worshiped Baal. That's why his name was Balak, from Baal. Baal is the devil. Sometimes they shorten it to Baal or Bel. So Balaam was supposed to be of God. He was supposed to be of Jehovah, the great God. But yet he's shacking up with a false religion, and his name is Balaam. Even his name has the name Baal in it. So he started out as a good prophet, following the true God, but he allowed himself to get suckered in to the false God. He should not even have gone. Why would he even gone to a king that worshipped a different God? Well, God told him, okay, I'm going to let you go, but only if you say what I say you're to say. Now we go to chapter 23. And it says, and Balaam said unto Balak, build me here 7 altars, and prepare me here 7 oxen and 7 rams. You see, this guy already made sacrifice to his false god. So old Balaam says, no, let's make sacrifice to the true God. So he's still trying to separate himself. But he finally is worn down by Balak. And this temptation of riches and promotion finally overtake him. And we get to the end of this sermon, we see that he sinned. And that the way of Balaam is the way of error because he gave in to the temptation of the money and the promotion by the king of the false religion. 23, and Balaam said unto Balak, build me here 7 altars, and prepare me here 7 oxen and 7 rams. And Balak did as Balaam had spoken, and Balaam offered on every altar a bullock and a ram. And Balaam said unto Balak, stand by thy burnt offering, and I will go, peradventure the Lord will come to meet me, and whatsoever he showeth me, I will tell thee. And he went to an high place. And God met Balaam, and he said unto him, I have prepared 7 altars, and I have offered upon every altar a bullock and a ram. And the Lord put a word. Now, right off the bat, that's kind of a lie, because he didn't do it himself. This guy helped. Imagine how God must feel. Rather than his man offering sacrifice, he goes to the enemy, which is what the Moabites were, of God. And he says, will you help me make a sacrifice to God? See the joining together of a false religion with a true religion? Not on the right foot, this guy. He doesn't sound like a good guy. He should have said, yeah, I'll go over there while I make sacrifice to God. But no, he was lazy. He didn't want to do all the work himself. So he had them help him do the sacrifice. And he says, verse 5, and the Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth and said, return unto Balak, and thus shalt thou speak. And he returned unto him, and lo, he stood by his burnt sacrifice, he and all the princes of Moab. And he took up his parable and said, Balak the king of Moab hath brought me from Aram out of the mountains of the east, saying, come, curse me Jacob, and come defy Israel. How shall I curse whom God hath not cursed, or how shall I defy whom the Lord hath not defied? And from the top of the rocks I see him, and from the hills I behold him. Lo, the people shall dwell alone, and shall not be reckoned among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob, and the number of the 4th part of Israel? Let me die the death of a righteous, and let my last end be like his. And Balak said unto Balaam, what hast thou done unto me? I took thee to curse mine enemies, and behold, thou hast blessed them altogether. And he answered and said, must I not take heed to speak that which the Lord hath put in my mouth? And Balak said unto him, come, I pray thee, with me into another place from whence thou mayest see them. Thou shalt see but the uttermost part of them, and shalt not see them all. And curse me them from thence. And he brought him unto the field of Zophim, to the top of Pisgah, and built 7 altars, and offered a bullock and a ram on every offer. And he said unto Balak, stand here by thy burnt offering, while I meet the Lord yonder. And the Lord met Balaam, and put a word in his mouth, and said, go again unto Balak, and say thus. And when he had come to him, behold, he stood by his burnt offering, and the princes of Moab with him. And Balak said unto him, what hath the Lord spoken? And he took up his parable, and said, rise up, Balak, and hear. Hearken unto me, thou son of Zippor. God is not a man that he should lie, neither the son of man that he should repent. Hath he said, and shall he not do it? Or hath he spoken, and shall he not make it good? Behold, I have received commandment to bless, and he hath blessed, and I cannot reverse it. He hath not beheld iniquity in Jacob, neither hath he seen perverseness in Israel. The Lord his God is with him, and the shout of a king is among them. God brought them out of Egypt. He hath, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. Surely there is no enchantment against Jacob, neither is there any divination against Israel. According to this time, it shall be said of Jacob and of Israel, what hath God wrought? So Israel over here was blessed. And yet, this guy wanted them cursed. Matter of fact, we're going to see they're blessed 3 times by Balaam. Continuing reading there. Verse 24. Behold, the people shall rise up as a great lion, and lift up himself as a young lion. He shall not lie down until he eat of the prey and drink the blood of the slain. And Balak said unto Balaam, neither curse them at all, nor bless them at all. But Balaam answered and said unto Balak, told not I thee, saying, all that the Lord speaketh, that I must do? And Balak said unto Balaam, come, I pray thee, I will bring thee up unto another place. Peradventure it will please God that thou mayest curse me them from thence. And Balak brought Balaam up on the top of Peor, and he looketh toward Jeshimon. Verse 29, and Balaam said unto Balak, build me here 7 altars, and prepare me here 7 bullocks and 7 rams. And Balak did as Balaam had said, and offered a bullock and a ram on every altar. Now wait a minute. Balak did the sacrifice this time. This guy's supposed to be the prophet of God. Why isn't he sacrificing? Why is he allowing the heathen king who's following Baal, the devil, to sacrifice to God? Something wrong with this guy Balaam. He shouldn't even have gone with them in the first place. Well, chapter 24. And when Balaam saw that it pleased the Lord to bless Israel, he went not, as at other times, to seek for enchantments, but he set his face toward the wilderness. So this guy Balaam is a lazy preacher. He didn't even go talk to God this time. He just pretended to talk to God. He says, and Balaam lifted up his eyes, and he saw Israel abiding in their tents according to their tribes, and the Spirit of God came upon him. Even though he didn't seek God, God came because there was something God wanted to say. And he took up his parable and said, Balaam, the son of Beor, hath said, and the man whose eyes are open hath said. He hath said, which heard the words of God, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance, but having his eyes open. How goodly are thy tents, O Jacob, and thy tabernacles, O Israel. As the valleys are they spread forth, as gardens by the river's side, as the trees of aloes, which the Lord hath planted, and his cedar trees besides the waters. He shall pour the water out of his buckets, and his seed shall be as in many waters, and his king shall be higher than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. God brought him forth out of Egypt. He hath, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. He shall eat up the nations of his enemies, and shall break their bones and pierce them through with his arrows. Imagine being Balak sitting there listening to that. You just lost 21 rams and 21 bullocks that you just sacrificed. So you're out all these different cattle, and you're asking this guy to ask his God to curse Israel, and 3 times he just cursed them instead. You know, he probably started feeling a little bit uncomfortable. Verse 9, he couched. He lay down as a lion, as a great lion. Who shall stir him up? Blessed is he that blesseth thee, and cursed is he that curseth thee. And Balak's anger was kindled against Balaam. I'll bet. He lost 21 animals, or more than 21, 42 really. And he's not getting what he wants. He's not getting the message that he's wanting to pay for. You know, a lot of people, they go to church, they want to give a big offering because they want to hear a good message that makes them feel good about themselves. And true preaching is supposed to make you feel bad about yourself and point out the fact that you're a sinner. So old Balak is not hearing what he wants to hear from the Bible. And he's getting upset about it. And Balak's anger was kindled against Balaam, and he smote his hands together. And Balak said unto Balaam, I called thee to curse mine enemies, and behold, thou hast altogether blessed them these 3 times. Therefore now flee thou to thy place. I thought to promote thee into great honor, but lo, the Lord hath kept thee back from honor. And Balaam said unto Balak, Speak I not also to thy messengers which thou sendest unto me, saying, If Balak would give me his house full of silver and gold, I cannot go beyond the commandment of the Lord to do either good or bad of mine own mind. But what the Lord saith, that will I speak. Now, behold, I go to my people. Come therefore, and I will advertise thee what this people shall do to thy people in the latter days. And he took up his parable and said, Balaam, the son of Beor, hath said, and the man whose eyes are open hath said. He hath said, which heard the words of God, and knew the knowledge of the Most High, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance, but having his eyes open. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not now. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a sepulchre shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and destroy all the children of Sheth. And Edom shall be a possession. Seir also shall be a possession for thine enemies, and Israel shall do valiantly. Out of Jacob shall come he that shall have dominion, and shall destroy him that remaineth of the city. And when he looked on Amalek, he took up his parable, and said, Amalek was the first of the nations, but his latter end shall be that he perish forever. And he looked on the Kenites, and took up his parable, and said, Strong in thy dwelling place, and thou puttest thy nest in a rock. Nevertheless, the Kenites shall be wasted until Asher shall carry thee away captive. And he took up his parable and said, Alas, who shall live when God doeth this? The ships shall come from the coast of Chittim, and shall afflict Asher, and shall afflict Eber, and he also shall perish forever. And Balaam rose up and went and returned to his place, and Balak also went his way. So there's the story of Balaam and Balak. But believe it or not, it doesn't end there. He wanted so bad to say what this guy wanted to hear. He wanted promotion. He wanted money. But all he could do was allow the Lord to speak through him. And old Balaam went away. But yet, we have the story of the way of Balaam being a wrong way, a perverse way. He loved money. If he loved money more than God, then he must have received the money. We find out later what happened. But before we find out what happened, like I said, you kind of have to read between the lines. Let's read part of chapter 25. Numbers chapter 25 tells us about this sin of integration. Verse 25:1, and Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. And they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods, and the people did eat and bow down to their gods. And Israel joined himself unto Baal Peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. So what Balaam did, and like I say, you kind of have to read between the lines, but it's clearly given in the New Testament, is this guy, Balaam, as he was going back home, he probably was thinking about all that money and all that promotion he could have had. He says, well, God would not let me curse Israel. But he thought to himself, how could we get God to curse Israel? You see, God was cursing Balak because Balak served another god. So in his mind, Balaam thought, if I go back and I tell that guy Balak, if you allow Israel to mix with your people and accept your customs, then God will be so angry that he'll curse Israel himself because of their sin. You see, we've already read that God saw no sin in Israel. And so that's what Balaam did. He went back and said, Balak, you know what you need to do? You need to get your pretty girls to go meet the pretty boys of Israel. And you need to send out your pretty boys to meet the pretty girls of Israel. Maybe have a little dance party. Maybe just have a little social, a little get-together. Maybe a prom. Have them all just kind of start mixing it. And once they start marrying each other, well, there'll be no Israel, there'll be no Moab. They're just all one. And if God hates Baal, and God is going to try to curse you because of your customs, well, if they accept your customs, then God will curse them. And if God won't exterminate completely Israel, and you've integrated and mixed in with them, then you guys can live and don't have to worry about being killed. And it sounds like old Balak said, that's a good idea. Gave him some money. And that's the way of Balaam. Balaam preached what God told him to say. And he realized, that's against the agenda. So he said, how can I say something that will get the agenda and yet I can get some money off of it? So the way of Balaam is telling people, come together and mix together. And that way you all get along. And guess what? No, that way you all get destroyed. Because as we read chapter 25, we find out that that's what happened. And so the people of Israel began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. Fornication. So this wicked devil, Balaam, literally counseled that king to let your people fornicate with their people. Get them knocked up, have a little babies, get some integration going so that there is no Israel. There's no Moab. They're all just a mixed people. And that's the way to get rid of God's chosen people, is to get them to mix with the heathen. What does the Bible say about that? Well, Jeremiah chapter 10 verse 2. The Bible tells us this, command from God. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. For the custom of the people are vain. You see, the reason God chose Israel to go into that land to destroy the Moabites and the Amalekites is because they were heathen that served a false god, and they were sinning. And God wanted that judgment to fall upon them for their sin. So what did old Balaam say? Well, if God's people are fornicating too, well then they'd be cursed, just like God says you're cursed. Misery loves company. You guys are going to die. God already said you're cursed. So why not mix with them so the curse will fall on them too? And even though you're cursed, you can at least feel better because God's destroying them along with you. You see how it works? That's the way of Balaam. So what happened? Well, verse 3 of chapter 25, Israel joined himself unto Baal Peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. they joined up with the heathen and began to worship idols and commit fornication. And the Lord said unto Moses, take all the heads of the people and hang them up before the Lord against the sun, that the fierce anger of the Lord may be turned away from Israel. And Moses said unto the judges of Israel, slay every one his man that were joined unto Baal Peor. And the only way that God's wrath was appeased was God told Moses, go kill every one that fornicated with them. Whew. Aren't you glad we don't live in the Old Testament? I'm glad we're in a day of age of grace where God doesn't kill people every time they sin. Verse 6, and behold, one of the children of Israel came and brought unto his brethren a Midianitish woman, in the sight of Moses, in the sight of all the congregation of the children of Israel, who were weeping before the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. They're all sitting there weeping for that sin, and one guy just marches right through with his pagan woman. He says, look at her, ain't she beautiful? I'm just going to go on in here and fornicate with her. And they're all saying, no, we don't want to fornicate. We want to serve God and live pure and live righteous. And he just marches right in. What's the Bible say about idol worship and doing things like that? 2 Corinthians chapter 6. I think it's 2 Corinthians. Let me check this out. God does not want us to mix with the heathen. 2 Corinthians chapter 6. Look at this. Verses 14 through 17. Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness? And what concord hath Christ with Belial? It says, or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? And what agreement hath the temple of God with idols? For you are the temple of the living God. As God hath said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. Wherefore come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing. God does not want his people to join with Baal, with Satan. What is the way of Balaam? It's taking the way of the world, the way of Satan, and trying to mix it. Today the equivalent would be taking the things of the world and mixing them with Christianity. What are the politicians doing in the world today? Taking all the worldly wicked customs and pagan practices and forcing it on Christians and say, you got to like it or not, but you're going to have to put up with it. The Bible says homosexuality is a sin. Well, the state now says, well, you've got to accept it or else. The Bible says it's wrong to fornicate. What does the state do? They say, well, we have welfare, and if you're poor and you have a baby, we'll give you more welfare. Well, the state literally pays people to fornicate and make babies. The state has accepted the way of Balaam and is rewarding the sinners and persecuting those who are trying to live righteous and live for God. The way of Balaam is sin and enjoy it in order for God to chastise you. It's glorifying sin. Well, what happened to this Midianitish woman and this guy? Verse 7. And when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saw it, he rose up from among the congregation and took a javelin in his hand, and went in after the man of Israel into the tent, and thrust both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman, through her belly, so that the plague was stayed from the children of Israel. And those that died in the plague were 24,000. Wow. So the counsel of Balaam to Balak was, well, if you guys don't want to die and want God to curse you, then you just go fornicate with the children of Israel. Then their kids will be your kids, and your kids will be their kids, and you'll all be one. And God will curse them, and not just you. And maybe you'll survive. Well, God got so angry, he killed how many? 24,000. 24,000 people in Israel died because they were a bunch of fornicators who went over to the dark side, the side of Balaam, and they allowed themselves to be led by Lucifer to sin against God. And what you saw happen was the downfall of society, because the king said, oh yeah, let's all mix, let's all get together, and he endorsed the sin of fornication. You know, it's not the place of the government to tell you to fornicate. If anything, the government's place is to tell you, look, do right and live right. A clean society makes for a good moral society. A filthy, reprobate ruling class leads to a wicked and perverse ruling class. You see, a moral society promotes and propagates a moral government. An immoral government makes an immoral society. And that's the problem with the way of Balaam. Mix politics. Take away the things of God, go to politics, and say, hey, let politics preach that whatever you want to do is fine. It's allowing Lucifer to get into the church. It's allowing Lucifer to mix with the children of God and take away all social morals. That's the way of Balaam. What happened? Well, the children of Israel were jealous, and they said, we're not going to do this. We're going to get rid of the sin out of our camp. And when they did, God went back to dealing with them. And God chastised them instead. Now what we see happening in the world today, and boy is this sad. It's so sad. We see the way of Balaam again. You see all throughout the world today they have what they call these refugees that are leaving the Middle East. Why are they leaving the Middle East? Because there was an Arab Spring and there was upheaval. And all these Arab countries, there are people killing each other, and so these people said, oh, we're going to flee, and we're going to go into Europe, and we're going to come even to America, and we're going to mix ourselves with them. Because we're refugees, we just want to be free. You know what? They're not refugees. The majority of them are males that are the age of soldiers. Many of them are on a fatwa. They believe in a war. They want a caliphate. They want to take over the world. So they come into these countries and they say, oh, we're just refugees, please help us and take care of us. But their intention, as Balak's intention, was to take over. And what do? Many of them fornicate. Many of them rape. You go to Sweden, you go to these countries in Europe where all these refugees come in. What are they doing? They're bringing in their religion and their customs, and they're taking over. It's the way of Balaam. What does that mean? That means God's judgment's going to fall. You see, that's what people that preach the way of Balaam don't realize. Oh, it might feel good for a minute to fornicate and enjoy life, but you're setting yourself up for destruction and a fall because God's judgment fell on Israel, and it fell on them. So we have Balak today allowing refugees to come in, and it's mixing and it's integration, and guess what it's going to lead to? The downfall and judgment of God on our country, because the ways of the heathen, the ways of the pagans, are going to become the ways of this. America was a country that was founded in God. The founding documents allude to many times God the Creator, and its customs were the Bible. But yet it went into downfall in the 60s with the free love and the fornication. And what's happening in America today? They're allowing all these refugees to come over. Eventually they're going to set up their own Sharia law. And all the things of God will be forgotten. And the things of Satan and the devil will be brought to pass and to take over. That's what Balak tried to do. Take over Israel by integrating with them. That's what the devil is doing today. Bringing in all these people claiming they're refugees. But what are they bringing? They're bringing the way of Balaam. They're bringing their perverseness. They're bringing in the wrong way. They're not the people of God. They're bringing in fornication. Some of those places in Europe, they say they're raping women left and right. It's sick. It's wrong. It's not of God. So, finish up with these last 3 verses one more time. And we'll read those 3 verses and I'll be done. And I just want you to see that what I've tried to teach today is exactly what the Bible teaches. The way of Balaam was going against God and telling them, we'll just get together and integrate. And when you integrate and come together, then you mix, you kick God out. And the Bible tells us that over and over. When people kick God out and come together, then God is kicked out. And God has to judge them because He wants them separate. The book of Acts, it says that God set up boundaries on the earth so that men may seek after God. When men get outside of their boundaries and start coming together, they kick God out. That's the way of Balaam. That's a bad counsel of telling people, well, just mix each other and get together. When they do, God is forgotten. And the pagan customs and the pagan culture come together and mix, and people begin to do perverse and wicked things like rape, like fornication, like murdering their sons and daughters like they do under Sharia law. Just murder a daughter and say, oh, it's okay. I thought she was evil, so I just had a right to murder her. That's not right. In 2 Peter 2:15, once more, it says, which have forsaken the right way and are gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Bosor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness. Many who are politicians love money, so they're not standing up and saying anything against the refugees. They're not saying anything against promoting evil and wickedness in our nation. They just, oh, well, it's okay. Oh, it's okay. The Supreme Court said it's okay to have homosexuality and homosexual marriage. Oh, and they just shut up and let it happen. And yet God in heaven steams and is angry at what he sees, because the way of Balaam has come in. Jude chapter 1 and verse 11. What does it say? Woe unto them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the error of Balaam for a reward, and perished in the gainsaying of Korah. When you have the way of Balaam come in, it's a perverse way. It's an error. And guess what? People will perish. We're about to see in this world, according to the Bible, the tribulation period. And according to the Bible, in the tribulation, there will be so many people that die under the judgment of God. We're also about to see World War III. And under World War III, people will be dying left and right, because there's a maniacal, crazy group in the world today that live only to kill other people. One of the prophecies of Islam is, whenever there's much bloodshed in the world, that's when the Mahdi comes. So the more bloodshed that there is, the more chance of their Mahdi will come. Who's the Mahdi? Well, you see, people who aren't saved and Luciferians, they're looking for their false prophet to come. The Bible calls him the Antichrist. Many of the Muslims, they want bloodshed. They're murdering Christians left and right in other countries. Their Mahdi is coming. The Antichrist is coming. Why? Because the way of Balaam is the way to bring him in. I hope this makes sense to you. I hope you understand where I'm coming from with all this. The way of Balaam is basically take the evil in the world and try to mix it with the good. America was one of the last Christian nations in the earth. People that are called Christians were in America. They were taking a stand for righteousness and truth. And now what have they done? They've come in and they've told the Christians, you shut up, you submit, you do what you're told, you don't have any rights. We believe it's got to be like this. And they've mixed in the evil. And now there's very few that are standing for the truth, like Moses did. Bad times are coming. God's judgments is going to fall. Revelation 2:14. Because I have few things against thee. God is against you that are against God. Because thou hast them there that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornication. This is the world we live in today, where they're mixing in the evil with the good. And then telling people, oh, just do it, whatever you want. Oh, there's no right, there's no wrong, there's no evil. The Bible, what a dumb book, we hate that. No, just do whatever you want and enjoy life. And if anybody says otherwise, they're just a bigot. And shut them up and don't listen to them. Well, thank God the Bible is true. And the Bible warns us about the way of Balaam. And as a minister of the gospel, I can't stop preaching because I want this. To me, that means very little. Nor do I want this. I just want to please God. And I hope that this message has made clear the way of Balaam. I hope you can see it with your own eyes. How that they are mixing the world with all these evil doctrines and all these evil teachings. And what it's doing is destroying Christianity. The more people they let into America from foreign countries, the more they'll bring their pagan ways, the more they'll bring their teachings and culture, and the more that will push us against the culture of God. The more fornication you'll see in America. The more rape you'll see, like in Europe, where these refugees are raping women left and right. The more murder you'll see. And unless Jesus comes back, it's going to get even worse. The Bible says we're in perilous times. We are in perilous times. So that's the way of Balaam. It's a doctrine, it's an error, it's a teaching, and it's perverse. And it's basically, look at Christians, see what they believe and what they teach, and then force upon them the exact opposite through the government, through religion, through these refugees, and force them to mix into believing what they shouldn't believe, what the Bible teaches against. It's hard to be a Christian nowadays. It really is. Because you stand up for the truth of the Bible and you say, no, this is right, this is right. And they say, shut up, bigot. Shut up, sexist. Shut up, racist. Shut up, you homophobe. Shut up, you hypocrite. That's what they do. All they know how to do is call names. But if you want to be a true Christian, you have to stand for the truth and stand against him. Be like Balaam's ass and just say, nope, I'm not going any farther with you. I'm standing for the truth. Because I see the judgment of God standing as an angel, ready to put his judgment on this country that's turned against him. Anyway, there it is. That's the way of Balaam. I did the best I could to try to present it. I hope it's understandable, and I hope this has been edifying to you, and I hope it helps you to see how important it is to fellowship with other Christians, to be with them, and to stay separate and stay away from the way of Balaam, and to stay away from the king of Moab and his teachings, and to not mix ourselves with the world and give in to this. You know, not only is there physical fornication, physical adultery, there's spiritual adultery as well. And there are teachings in the world today from people who claim to be Christians that are wrong. And we need to separate from those. This is our authority, and this is what we're to follow today. So God bless. Sorry I went a little long. Hope this wasn't boring, but hopefully it was edifying, because I believe this is an important teaching, important doctrine, and we need to realize we do not need to mix with the king of Moab. We do not need to mix with the things of Baal. We need to be even more separate today as Christians than ever. So God bless. We'll see you next time on thecloudchurch.org.